we had our first son, he was still nursing, and anything that I would eat would make him sick. He was like screaming for hours in the night, turning purple from screaming. The pediatrician told me it was colic, that it was normal. I said, absolutely not. There's no way that it's normal. So we just started experimenting. We found somebody that raised grass-fed beef and pastured pork. All of a sudden, within 24 hours, he was fine. From being awake screaming 11 p.m. till 4 a.m. every day to he slept through the night from that point on. That kind of shows you like that this is for sure what changed and what made a difference. Obviously, I was not going back after that.
Hello and welcome. This is Brett Bennis, and joining us today is Addison Smith, the founder of Permaculture Pastures, a company dedicated to sustainable and regenerative farming practices. Addison, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Brett?
Doing well. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, so we are a first generation farm in North Texas, and we practice regenerative agriculture. We purchased a farm 5 years ago that was basically dirt, and everyone around us, all of the ranchers, told us we were going to have to reseed. There was no way we were going to be able to do grass fed, and we just brought in a bunch of different species, healed our land naturally, and now we are able to support running 30 head of cattle on our property with just exclusively grass-fed.
Wow. And how many acres did you say that was?
Total with our leases, we have 300 acres.
Okay. So 30 head of cattle. Nice. So what's the dream? What are you hoping to do with this company?
I would like to be able to build it to a place that it's sustainable enough that our children can take it over if they want to and can continue to feed themselves and our grandchildren with truly nutrient-dense food. I would like it to be an example of what's possible with permaculture in Texas. Texas can kind of be a little bit intimidating because it's very dry and very hot, and grass doesn't like it very much. And so just showing if you do things naturally and if you bring in multiple species and you go back to native grasses instead of only coastal, that you can create this rich microbiome that can support itself, doesn't need all of the rain, can sustain in the heat, and that it is possible here too, not just in places on the East Coast, like some very famous places with Joel Salatin and Greg Judy. We have to do things a little bit differently, but showing people it is possible in our climate as well. And being a sustainable food source, because that's something that's talked about a lot right now, is we can't keep feeding future generations. There's too many people. We're overpopulated. And I think we just farm wrong. I don't think that we're overpopulated. And I would like to prove that with this.
That's awesome. So what took you in that direction? It sounded like your education was in a different area, but what took you in this direction originally, and how'd you get here?
Yeah, so I definitely wasn't thinking that I was going to be a farmer, although my mom laughs when I say that because there were definitely signs. I grew up in a neighborhood. We had no land, never had animals or anything, but I collected egg cartons just in case we ever got chickens. So she laughs, saying that I always knew I was going to, but I felt God pull on my heart to go into ministry. So that's why I started doing my education. And then we had our first son, and he was really sick. He was still nursing, and anything that I would eat would make him sick. And he was like screaming for hours in the night, turning purple from screaming. And the pediatrician told me it was colic and that it was normal. And I said, absolutely not. There's no way that it's normal. And so we just started experimenting, and we found somebody that we knew that that raised grass-fed beef and pastured pork. And all of a sudden, like within 24 hours, he was fine when that was what I ate.
Wow.
From being awake screaming from 11 p.m. till 4 a.m. every day to he slept through the night from that point on. That kind of shows you like that this is for sure what changed and what made a difference. And so we got into just doing it for ourselves. We were on 3 acres at that. And obviously I was not going back after that. So got into raising it for ourselves. Then we were kind of part of a community that was a little bit more natural minded. And so they were very interested and started asking, when you do chickens, could we buy a couple? When you do cows, could we buy a half a cow? And we only had 3 acres, so we could only do 1 cow at a time. And a grass-fed cow takes 18 months. And so we had enough people asking us, and we really liked doing it. And for our son's sake, we knew we would be doing it forever. We kind of thought, let's do something crazy. Let's move an hour away from where my husband worked, from the businesses that we own, and buy some land that was just trash and see if we can fix it, see if we can haul off all this trash, fix the house, and start farming. And it has been a long road, but we have motivation in our son. And then in myself, my own health, the way that it started to improve was just, we will never go back.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. It was such a stark difference, changing one thing, and then it sounds like virtually overnight that shift happened.
Yes, within 24 hours. Totally amazing.
So you started with trash land, to use your words.
Yes.
And then, like, where did you start? What did you do? Like, did you get cows first? Did you get chickens? Like, where did you go with that?
So because the land we bought was pretty much dirt, and we knew we would need to regenerate it. And we didn't want to use chemicals. We didn't want to use synthetic fertilizers. We wanted to stick to what we knew was something that our son wouldn't be bothered by. And we were just going to try and go as natural as possible. So we bought 600 chickens. And we built this massive 30-foot open bottom chicken coop trailer that we would drag through the pasture with a tractor every couple days, move it. And their manure was fertilizing. We were feeding them clean feed that we sourced, so it wasn't putting a bunch of garbage into the soil. And we did that for almost 3 years, and we have grass now. We took a break from the chickens after they did their job, because that was a lot of chicken.
A
But
lot of work
just,
too.
oh yeah, it was a lot of work. But it was amazing to watch everyone around being conventional ranchers and saying, like, you're gonna do what? Like, you could just spray it. Who in their right mind would buy 600 chickens? Probably no one. Looking back, probably no one. But we just watching the path of the tractor and going from, you could see dirt, to now there's grass everywhere, and there's only a couple patches here and there on our property now that have dirt that we're still working on. But it was pretty impressive. And then we also had sheep that we would rotate. So the chickens would go first, then the sheep, then the cows, and they would all break each other's parasite cycles and eat the bugs, eat the weed seeds, graze it down to the right levels for each other. And it was beautiful, and it worked.
Wow. So, like, the chickens, you would feed the chickens, and then the chickens' manure would cause the grass, and then the grass is what you then brought in the cows to feed off of. Is that kind of how that worked?
Yeah. So chickens, doing it in a loop. Chickens would drop their manure. Sheep would come in and break up the manure, and kind of, sheep forage a little bit more than cows.
Oh,
So
sheep, yeah.
they'll actually eat more than grass. Cows prefer mostly grass. Sheep will eat a little bit of other things. So we would let them go through first to kind of eat down the weeds before they would get too big and seed out. And then the cows would come through and eat grass. They would pack the manure from both the chickens and the sheep into the dirt, and then leave their manure, which then we would pull back through. And by the time the chickens got there, there were larvae and things growing in the cow manure that they would eat as protein spread. And since they were digging for that, they were spreading the cow manure across the pasture while they were digging for the goodies inside. And it was just, they were all working together to fertilize it, break each other's parasite cycles, because cow parasites can't live in sheep, sheep parasites can't live in chickens. And so if this ground has a 30-day break from any one of those species, those parasites die because they can't find a host. So then you don't have to worm or any of
Wow.
those kind of interventions. You just rotate them and let something else. You don't even have to not use your land for 30 days. You just have to put something else there that can't host that parasite, and they just keep breaking each other's cycles, and you never end up with this huge problem that you have to treat with medicine.
Hmm. I love that. So what did you do for the bigger animals? Did you just cordon off areas and then like put them in different ones at different days? Like how did that, you mentioned with the chickens, you'd drag the cages across. I assume you couldn't drag cows across. So,
Yeah, so we use electric fencing.
okay.
It's wire that rolls up. The chickens was netting. We tried that for a while. It was not very fun to use, was a major headache, got tangled all the time. So we kind of stopped using that and we just got a bunch of dogs. We had 8 Great Pyrenees at one point. Um, and when there
I've
you
been
have a
trying to
pack,
convince my wife to get a Great Pyrenees.
oh, do it. They're the best dogs in the world. We've had several different kinds of dogs. We've even had cattle dogs that are supposed to help me, and I will always pick a Great Pyrenees every time, especially if you have kids. They're amazing.
All
Um,
right. I'm going to take this clip and send it to her.
Perfect.
So where did you learn about this stuff, and like where did you start? Especially because a lot of the people who are probably going to be watching this have not done this before, might not even heard of permaculture before. Like
Yeah.
where did you start? What was your kind of like learning journey from beginning to end, and where did you get some of the info that you have and the understanding that you have?
YouTube. That's the short answer. I think it was all kind of like a rabbit hole. Trying to figure out what would make our son not sick. I was down to just eating meat, and he was still getting sick. Like we had tried eliminating everything, and I was like, this isn't possible. Like he has to be like, otherwise he's not going to live because he has to be able to eat something. And so just starting to figure out, okay, are there different ways that meat is processed? Are there different ways that meat is raised? Like people have eaten meat forever. Why is meat bothering him? Even when I was just doing vegetables, just doing fruit, like anything, why is this bothering him? People have survived. How did we break food? Um, and that was definitely a
How
major
did we
rabbit
break
hole.
food? Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know we live in a broken world. We broke it. It was designed perfectly and we broke it. And there are things that we will encounter in our life that, like getting hurt, getting sick, those things are going to happen because the world is broken. But is there something that we're doing that's making it worse? And is there something that we're doing that we could do that could make it less awful? And I think that we're poisoning ourselves now at this point, having researched all of that. But so I started trying to figure out, like, how did we break food? Like my son has to be able to eat something at some point in his life. And just going down this rabbit hole and finding um just saying, okay, what's the most natural way to do this? And you start finding people like Joel Salatin and Greg Judy and Justin Rhodes and people who are kind of paving the way to go back to, hey, we can do this without all the chemicals. We can do this without killing the soil to produce food. And then, yes, we're too populated to support ourselves with food if we do it that way because we're killing the dirt, we're killing the earth. And so just starting to Joel Salatin, I would start there if you're interested in anything to do with getting back to natural farming, natural food sources. He is a very smart man. He kind of inherited a family farm that was kind of dying and was able to regenerate it. And he does a lot of teaching and classes and workshops and internship programs. And we just ate up every book that he had, every video we could find of his. And it was just encouraging to see, oh, okay, there are people that want to do this the right way because other people have this problem, and maybe this really is the answer. Because all of us are looking for this answer. All these people that are watching his videos or buying his book, all of us have come to some problem that led us to this point, and that was encouraging. And then the rest of the learning was painful trial and error because, like I mentioned earlier, Joel Salatin's in the East Coast. They have way more rainfall, not near the heat, different growing season. He has a lot more experience under his belt. We're first generation. Both my husband and I grew up in the suburbs, never been around livestock in our lives. And we had some pretty painful setbacks, some major losses. Like our first year of thing, we didn't know better than when we were offered a neighbor's bull just to breed our cows for free, that you might want to ask why. Why will you let me use it for free? Because the calves he threw were too big for cows to birth, and we lost 4 cows, and that's insane. Most ranchers, come to find out, don't lose that many usually in their lifetime.
It's both
So
expensive and heartbreaking.
very expensive, very heartbreaking. It's supposed to be this exciting new life being welcomed onto the farm. Your first calf after you've worked for over a year to get the grass good, then she's been pregnant for 9 months, and here comes the baby, and then you lose them both, and it's just like, ugh. And there's been a lot of that. A lot of, oh, we should probably get guardian dogs because some neighbor dog just killed 80 of our chickens in 15 minutes. Figuring out, oh, you can give sheep garlic to help kill some of their parasites if the cycle isn't breaking fast enough, because all of a sudden our sheep are just dropping. And it's been a lot of learning, and it's hard, but it is worthwhile. And when you get it right, it feels very good.
Have you ever heard of Back to Eden gardening?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Did that play into it all?
A little bit. That's again a different climate that a lot of his does. The concepts, like we mulch our garden, like they do, and similar concepts. But again, it's hard to finding people that know how to do this in Texas has been key for us. So finding other producers who've been doing it for a while. We've actually had recently in the area, someone started a coalition for regenerative producers, and everyone can get together and discuss it. They have speakers come in that are native to Texas. And even if you don't get knowledge, which you do, but even if you didn't, it's really nice to have other people there saying, I'm committed to doing this too, because all the ranchers around, because they did it this way, their granddad did it this way, it's almost offensive that you want to do it differently. And I understand too, because we know nothing. We're like these new kids coming in, first generation, like, you guys are probably farming wrong. And they're like, no, go away. And so there's like tension, or you just feel isolated because you are doing it differently. Just in anything else, if you're going upstream, you feel isolated and strange. So finding community that's committed to it is very key.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of times kind of cultural or like a society-wide psychology, usually what is different is bad. Like there's
Right.
kind of this automatic bias of, if it's different than what I know, it's bad.
Yeah.
And it kind of, there's reasons for that. There's like advantages to that, but it also prevents a lot of positive change. And it's really difficult for the people who are trying to make that change happen. So,
Yeah. And I can understand too, like tradition and culture are important, and so it can feel like you're attacking that. Um, there's a lot of pushback in the agricultural community when I say that rotationally mob grazed beef is higher nutritionally, has a higher nutritional value per calorie than feedlot beef. I often get, well, agriculture has a hard enough time. We don't need to be attacking each other. We should all be supporting farmers. And I agree, we need to support farmers. We will not have food without them, regardless of how you're producing. But it is also true scientific fact that if you rotate cows intentionally and mob grazing style, that they have more nutritional value. And I don't mean that as offensive to the person who is doing the feedlot. They may not know, and if they do, it's more work, and or it takes more time to make the same amount of money. Like there are tons of motivation to not do it this way. But it doesn't change the fact that it is scientifically true that it produces a superior product.
Change is always really difficult, and especially when you're kind of I grew up in a kind of farmer culture and is all that, and so there definitely tends to be a lot of focus on the way like the way you grew up doing things, the way
Yeah.
you know how to do things.
Yeah.
Um, it becomes a part of it kind of becomes a part of who you are, and instead of
Right.
and unfortunately that can mean that a lot of people are a bit reticent to change. But how has you and your husband, is it Ryan?
Yes, Ryan.
Yes, I'm noticing in the title there. How have you and your husband kind of processed that emotionally and working through that? Are there um, have there been milestones? Have there been events? Have there been breakthroughs in your own ability to kind of walk this out in kind of a socio-cultural way?
I would say for the most part, we're pretty much just in everything, we're pretty self-motivated, pretty this is what we've set our mind to do. And I, in a respectful way, I don't care if you like it or not, but this is what I've set my mind to do and I'm going to do it. We did, however, recently we almost gave up um, because it's hard. It's a lot of work. It takes 8 times as long to make the same amount of money um, the way we were doing it. And then we had someone stop by. We knew he did regenerative agriculture also. We asked him to stop by and tell us what he thought and kind of told him we're kind of thinking about going to doing grain finished, and we'll still put them in pasture and rotate them so they're not like sitting in their own feces and stuff because we don't feel like that's ethical. But it's hard and we're kind of exhausted. And he was like, no, don't give up. You guys have worked so hard and you're finally getting to the part where it will start to be easier because you have grass now. Um and just having one person kind of say like, no, I believe in this too. I'm committed to this too. You're not by yourself. And to kind of point out, he said, if once you go to grain, you're kind of stuck because it's a huge investment to switch to grain. You have to get the grain bins and all this stuff, and then you're changing your marketing and everything. And we'd almost given up, but thankfully we had someone in our corner that was kind of like, wait a minute, and he had some theories for us to test. So we're testing those now to see if we can still do grass only, get some higher protein species of grass growing, find people that are baling higher protein species of grass, and kind of put some smaller sections together for our cows so that they can put on some muscle mass a little bit faster, and see if we can shrink the time difference between grass finished and grain finished. Usually a grain finished cow can go from weaning to butchering in 6 months. And if you're just grazing out in a pasture for grass fed, it takes 18 months, but you also get about half the meat. So it depending on, and we were taking a little bit longer, honestly, about 2 years, because our grass was bad for the first 5 years. Until this year, we've had bad grass. We've been building up. So it was taking about 8 times as long to produce the same amount of meat. Um, and and it was just kind of like, why are we doing this? And
You're doing all
and then
this work, and it's not
yeah,
producing much.
and right. And then people complaining about the price or complaining about the way our steaks looked, because I was talking to you before we started a little bit about the smoke and mirrors of food labeling. And so you can get a grass-fed steak in Walmart and it looks pretty much like the other one. And then you get ours and it's a little bit smaller and it's a little bit less fatty. And so it seems inferior. One, because it's not what you're used to. Two, it's smaller. That is less. And it's like, well, I got grass fed at Walmart for less, and it tasted better to me, and it was bigger. And then you kind of have to say, well, we're actually only feeding grass, and that grass fed means it's been fed grass at some point. It was finished in a feedlot just like everything else that you're eating. And just having to do the education and battling with that was kind of getting discouraging, because you're like, I'm trying to give you something better.
I feel like you're fighting on all sides, huh?
Yeah. And just yeah, being discouraged because you're giving someone something that's better for them, but these other people are kind of being a little bit shady in how they're marketing. It's legal, but how they're marketing makes it look like we're producing something the same way, but it's way not as good. And so yeah, it was getting discouraging on all sides. And we just kind of needed a reminder, like, you're doing it to be sustainable for future generations. You're doing it to give your family higher quality food. You're doing it because your health and your son's health are so much better now. Why would you go back to that? And at the beginning, when I first got healthy from switching to our grass fed and prioritizing red meat, um, it was a huge change, like with our son. I used to pass out all the time. I used to have excruciating pain. It was horrible. And now I haven't passed out in years. I don't have pain. I feel amazing, but since it's been so long, I guess I forgot how awful it was. And it's like, well, maybe we don't need to farm like this. But yeah, we do need to, and we will continue to. We definitely just got discouraged for a minute there.
Yeah, understandably so. You said prioritizing red meat in that. Is that part of your health journey, that red meat ended up being better for you guys personally?
Yeah. There's a lot of nutrients that are very bioavailable for humans in red meat that are contained in other foods but are not bioavailable. So you can eat it and it's technically there, but your body isn't actually absorbing it. And red meat has a lot of those nutrients in a larger value and in a way that your body can actually truly use it, in a way that I believe if you just ate red meat, you don't really need to supplement with anything except for salt, and you would have everything you would need to be healthy.
Interesting. I know there have been a lot of proponents of what they call the carnivore diet, or the just eating red meat and all that. Especially a couple of different prominent figures have done that and had kind of made that story known. So that's interesting. It's your experience has also been with that.
I'm really passionate about the specifically women's health part of it, and how red meat is vilified. And so what I think would be the solution for a lot of women is kind of we're told to get away from we're told that it gives us cancer. And I think it would heal us. It healed me.
Mm.
I
Or
had
at
a
least the
lot of,
healthy version of it.
yeah, the healthy version of it. I mean, so beef has to be heated to an insane heat for the cells to morph into something that could be cancerous causing.
Hmm.
So it is potentially possible under certain insane circumstances. Kind of like people say that apple seeds are poisonous, but you'd have to eat an entire bushel of them to be poisoned. So if you eat one apple seed, is it poisonous? No. And if you cook beef without incinerating it, does it cause cancer? No. Could
Hmm.
it potentially if you incinerated it? Yes.
Can you talk about the bioavailable? Because I've not, I don't really understand how that works.
Okay, so different types of consumers. So like cows can eat grass and get nutrients out of it because their body is designed to digest that, and for them, the nutrients in grass are bioavailable. They're for that life. They can be consumed and put to use in their body. For
Versus
people,
like a person eating grass or a
yeah, a
human eating
person could
grass?
not eat grass and that would be their diet and they would be fine because we can't break it down. One, we don't have enough stomachs. Two, that mainly that we're not designed to be able to break it down and draw out the nutrients. So you would have to either create something synthetic to help you digest it, or you would have to go find those nutrients somewhere else. And
So you're
our
saying that the nutrient is there, but we don't have the capacity to absorb it from that type of food.
yes, so that's bioavailable means can you absorb it? Or is it made for something else? Because like there's vitamin D in a lot of different food sources, but pastured pork has the most bioavailable vitamin D. So you could eat less pastured pork than some of these other foods that have vitamin D, and you would have more vitamin D that ends up in your blood because it's available to you as your digestive system is designed.
That's interesting. I obviously I try to eat very clean, and I actually really do prefer red meat and would typically go for grass fed, but the I didn't understand the kind of the science behind the bioavailability and all of that.
Yeah.
So thank you for explaining that. That's helpful. Um, so you mentioned pastured pork as well. I've kind of avoided pork, even though like I really like bacon, I really like all that. Like, what is the difference between like pastured pork and perhaps regular pork you might find at a supermarket? Like, what are we looking at there?
Pastured pork to me is the thing that flavor, appearance, and nutritionally you could most easily tell the difference pastured versus conventional. So if people want to like figure out if this is a real thing, if it really makes a difference, I am like, go get a pig and raise a pig because pork is called the other white meat, right? That's how it's marketed. If the chicken's the white meat, pork's the other white meat. When you raise a pastured pig, pork is red like beef.
Really?
Yes, it's crazy. It's so different. And
Huh.
like it looks
I
like
raised pigs. I
steak.
grew up on a farm. I raised pigs, but it was always in a stall that we raised
Okay.
it, and so I didn't experience the red meat that is pork.
Yeah. So pastured pork that is not fed corn or soy. So we raised pigs before. I don't know if we'll do pigs again. We'll do sheep again. Pigs
They're really
tested
hard
my
to keep
patience.
in. They're really
um,
hard to keep in. They will just
yes,
stick their head under and go.
yes, especially when you're just using like 3 electric wires. Yeah, that's not fun. But
And they're omnivores, so nothing is safe if they get
yes,
out.
yes. So we did like a high protein peanut Milo. They would get eggs, boiled eggs sometimes. We had them in ponds. And so they were rooting and digging up all the pond stuff to eat. And they were completely 24/7 outside. And something that's so cool to me that I learned because I heard from Joel Salatin that a lot of heart doctors, good ones, will prescribe pastured chicken and pastured pork to their patients who are struggling with cholesterol because the sun, for us too, changes cholesterol to vitamin D. So if
Really?
we're outside more, people who are outside more in the sun more have lower cholesterol, even if you have the same diet, because it changes cholesterol to vitamin D. Same with pigs. So that's why pastured pork fat, the cholesterol is gone and has been turned into, not completely, but it's reduced and has been turned into vitamin D. And it's an animal food, so it's easily bioavailable to our bodies, unlike plant food that has vitamin D. So it is an extremely bioavailable, doesn't have cholesterol anymore, and is vitamin D. So heart doctors will actually tell their patients, yeah, you can have pastured eggs because the cholesterol has been changed into vitamin D. Yes, you can have bacon. The cholesterol has been changed into vitamin D because the sun changes cholesterol into vitamin D. It's so
That's
cool.
interesting. Yeah, I never knew that about the cholesterol, and nor about the red pork. That's fascinating. So is that why, like, is that like the free range label, free range eggs, that sort of thing is along those lines?
Free range actually means that the chickens have a door that is 24 inches by 24 inches, that if they want to, they could go outside. And they are fed inside, and their water's inside, and their lights are inside, and their friends are inside. They probably never went outside. So you have to, even pastured now is kind of iffy. So really you have to know your farmer. I am a huge proponent for knowing your farmer so that you can say, hey, how do you really raise your eggs? What do you actually feed them? Can I come see? Do you do farm tours? And you're like, okay, these are actually outside. They're actually being allowed to be omnivores. They're eating bugs, not just corn. And so the eggs are going to be lower in cholesterol. The chicken's going to be lower in cholesterol. They're going to have higher nutritional value because they're eating the diet they're supposed to be eating. Food labels are just, I hate them. They're very misleading. They're very misleading.
So speaking of farm tours, have you guys ever looked into or considered getting into agritourism? I know that's a really growing market these days for people in farming.
Yeah, we did. When we had more than cows, we did tours because it was much more interesting at that point because we could show, oh, here's the lambs, here's piglets. Do you want to hold a piglet? Do you want to collect the eggs? We can feed the meat chickens and move their tractor. And it was a lot more involved. Now, if you came out to our farm, it would be like, well, we moved the cows today, but it wouldn't be, I'm wigging out about it still, like the grass is this, do you see how many species of grass there are right here? And people are like, cool, do you have any baby animals I can pet? So we might do them again when we have more. My parents will at some point be moving onto the property that they own next to us, and they're going to have greenhouses and they're going to do sheep again. And so there will be more things, and we will probably go back to doing some tours a couple times a year. Then in the meantime, we like to do a lot of social media videos and everything so people can see what's going on the farm. Granted, you could obviously hide stuff on a video, but I think we've been transparent for a while and built good relationship with a lot of our customers, that there is trust there. And we really are striving to be as transparent as possible, but just there's not a lot to see if we did a farm tour right now. Be just cows eating the grass that I'm excited about.
So did the the thing we were just talking about, the term just blew my mind. Agritourism, was that lucrative at all? Did it help kind of sustain your farm, or was it more something you did for free on the side?
It's not lucrative. It was a lot of time. which is kind of another reason we stopped doing it as often. We sort of gradually weaned off of doing it because it would be, yes, come, and then at the end you can buy meat, and so we won't charge you for that, but we're assuming you're going to be a customer. We can buy meat, eggs, salsa, all the things, and a lot of people wouldn't. And so it was like, well, I just spent 2 or 3 hours, depending on how many questions, which I love educating and I love the questions, but it was just hard with all the things we had going on. And when we did have all those animals, there's a lot of chores, and we have little kids, and it didn't seem like the best use of our time as far as making this something we could sustain doing.
Yeah.
And you want to be someone that gives back to the community and educates them, but if you can't sustain it as a business model, then it's going to disappear, and so there's no point anyway in doing those things. So trying to find the balance of getting the business to be a strong business so that we can do more of those things that are education, and it still is something that supports us so that we can keep doing it.
You ever considered doing anything like just having a camper slab in the corner of your property for an Airbnb type thing, where you can have more of a scheduled, people can pay to come in and observe the farm, and they can stay there out in the country, but it's a little bit higher price point for them than just the regular tours? Have you ever considered that sort of thing?
We actually, so what I'm sitting in right now is our new farm stay cabin that we just built. Yeah, so it's separate. It's a separate 20 acres from where our house is. It's fenced, so it could be private if you want. But we have cows here seasonally because we rotate them, so they're not here 24/7. But if you wanted, then there's a bunch of farms around us that I got together with, and they'll do tours of their farms, and we can do one of ours. And so we are trying to build that aspect back in.
That's awesome. That's kind of a cool connection that you're actually sitting in the place that you're talking about building. And yeah, because I know that one of the huge issues economically is economic stability for farms, especially as you said, when you're dealing with kind of a delayed production cycle.
Yeah.
For being able to do that, like you have to be able to balance the mission with the economy of it, and like being able to bring those two together, and it is really difficult to do for a lot of farmers. How have you guys, you don't need to go into any details you don't want to, but how have you guys been able to kind of sustain yourselves economically through this? Is it through the selling of products, or is it through other businesses, or what do you guys do?
We probably this year, so this will be by the end of this year will have been our 6th year. We will probably be able to sustain ourselves. When I say we bought trash land, we really did. So we've had to redo all of the electrical, redo all of the fences, redo a lot of the ponds, redo a lot of the water infrastructure. We had to buy cows. We had to buy everything for the chickens and the pigs, and then it was just a lot of infrastructure that needed put in. And because I'm the one running it, and then I took like a year off when we had some personal stuff going on. It was kind of building up, and then it went back down a little bit for that year, and now we're building back up again. So it's hard because we were doing it grass fed in a way that was slower. And so hopefully now with this new advice and these things that we're testing out with higher protein grasses and higher protein clover and stuff like that, we'll be able to produce a little bit faster. Because selling it isn't really a problem. We have customers that want it. We just can't make it fast enough. So I think that if these experiments that we're doing with, let's try feeding this kind of grass and this kind of grass, if it works, we will be able to produce more meat and still be just grass, all natural. And then hopefully we'll be kind of done with infrastructure for a little while. And it should start to be profitable.
That's awesome. Congratulations on reaching this point. That's a lot
Yeah,
of hard.
thank you.
So do you mind sharing any of the tips that you were talking um, about improving that product time?
Really, it's just we the property that we bought was mostly coastal grass, which where there was grass, otherwise it was dirt. Um, Coastal grass is not native. It doesn't stockpile. So that means in the winter when it goes dormant, there's no nutritional value. So unless you cut it into hay while it's ripe, you're not going to get any nutritional value out of it. We don't have hay cutting equipment, and we just recently found someone who will come cut hay for us. So we weren't able to do that for a while. Um, and then even when it has nutritional value, it's not great nutritional value. So it doesn't have protein. And everybody knows when you're trying to build muscle, you eat protein. And same with cows. But we just had to find, and the answer in most of agriculture is so you give them soy because that's a cheap, fast, easy, high protein. I really don't want to feed them soy. I don't think it's good for them. I don't think it's good for us. Um, and then too, we have up until this year been letting our cows, since they're here for 2 years anyway, we let them have a baby. But they require more protein, just like humans. You require more protein to grow a baby. You require more protein to lactate. And if you're not getting that protein because you're eating coastal grass instead of good grass, then just like with humans, if you're not getting the nutrition, your body will take from you to feed your baby. And so our cows would start to bulk up and then they would get pregnant and they would wean back down because their body was taking their protein to feed to the baby. So we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit with that. And we finally figured that out. And so we won't be doing that anymore. And we have a couple of neighbors that we partner with, and they just do cow calf. They don't raise them out to feed them or to butcher them. So they would just take them to the sell barn normally. And we said, well, if you'll not give them this shot and not give them this thing, we'll just buy them from you. You don't have to take them up to the sell barn. We'll come get them and we'll give you whatever the top price was at the sell barn that week. So you're guaranteed to get the top price and you don't have to take them to the sell barn, and then we'll know exactly what we're getting. And we don't have to put our cows through the cycle of, oh, I need more protein, but I don't have any, so I'm going to take away from my body condition. So hopefully we fixed that part.
Yeah. So many of these things, they seem simple in retrospect, but they're always really hard-won lessons.
Yeah, and it seems like even so we started down the nutrition path trying to figure out like what was good for us, what was good for our bodies with our son. But I didn't really learn about how much my body needs protein for pregnancy or nursing or just as a woman compared to a man. Like we require more calories than men and all of that stuff I didn't start learning about until my second pregnancy, and I switched to a midwife, which is like a natural, much more natural than an OB-GYN. And they want you to be, I believe they want you to be more successful and not require intervention because they can't give you those interventions, whereas an OB-GYN can and can make money off of it. So it doesn't really matter if you're in optimal health, like they have a way to fix it. And so with the midwife, they don't have all these interventions at their disposal. So they're like, we need you in optimal condition. And learning about you should be eating this much protein a day. This is what happens if you don't. And I was like, oh, that's what's happening to our cows. So we thought we were saving money by not having to go buy calves, but we were costing ourselves in meat weight that our cows were putting on. So yeah, it was interesting because I wasn't even learning about cows when we figured that one out. It was, oh, it's probably connected. Like we were all designed by the same person. He probably has, oh, protein works this way, protein works this way. Because with our chickens, if they're not producing eggs, you need to up their protein. Like their reproductive system works better with more protein. So it was kind of finally putting all those pieces together. Oh, it works the same way for cows.
So were you able to, I'm not sure how that works with the permaculture part of this, but were you able to plant new grass, or how did you change that out?
So coastal grass has to be put in with plugs. You can't seed it, and it will not come up naturally. You have to get someone comes in and puts little plugs of grass in, and then you have to water it a ton. And it costs a lot of money. But chickens and pigs were key for this part, can get into the seed bank. The earth stores dormant seeds, and if the conditions are not optimal for them to grow, they'll just stay there waiting. And chickens scratch around, pigs really root stuff up and get stuff going. And they woke up the seed bank, and then we gave them optimal conditions with chicken manure, sheep manure, cow manure, the pigs digging it up, moving it around, the cows stomping it down, packing it in. Like, they planted grass for us, native grass that was there, that was in the seed bank, just waiting for there to be nutrition, just waiting for something to wake it up, and waiting for us to stop spraying stuff that killed it off every time it tried to come up.
That's awesome. Like the way you just explained that, the chickens, the pigs, and the cows, and how that brings all that up. I don't think I knew about the seed bank bit, but that is brilliant. That's awesome.
Pigs are
Using
super
what's already there.
Pigs are amazing for that. If they weren't so infuriating, they are one of the best animals for regenerative agriculture, because we had them on a spot that was gravel and it's now clover. And we put them in a spot that was a low spot that wouldn't ever hold water. And you put them in, and they have something special in their manure, pigs and ducks do, that it's called glee. I have no idea what that is, but it's called glee, and it seals it. And now there's a pond there because the pigs were there. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah. It's
I didn't even have to look
designed
into
to
that.
work well.
Huh. I actually really love pigs, other than the fact that like you said, if they get out and all that stuff. But their personality is amazing. Like
Oh
they're
yeah, we had a
very
boar.
incredible people.
He was my buddy for sure, and that was hard to get rid of him. Because we had him since he was a baby, and if you start rubbing his belly, no matter what he was doing, he couldn't help it, and he would flop on his side, and he just would lay there for you to rub his belly. And he's like, by the time we were getting rid of him, he was like this 800-pound pig, and you're over there like rubbing his belly. And I loved them, but when 30 pigs get out at the same time, and you're like chasing these blind animals all over your property,
Yeah.
not enjoyable.
And Hogwire wouldn't do that. Wouldn't do it.
We had pigs in like a real metal pen, when we were on 3 acres, and they didn't get out of that. But because we wanted to use them to regenerate the ponds, once we figured out that was a thing, we were like, we're going to put ponds everywhere. And anywhere there was a low spot, we were like, we're going to put fence around and put them in. We started with the electrical netting, and they would root up around it, not the netting, but they would push dirt on it, and it would short out. And so then they could get out. And once a pig gets out, they know they can get
They're
out.
really hard to catch.
And then, like, some of the bigger ones, if they would get out once or twice, then it was like they were like, it's worth getting shocked really bad. Well, even if the fence is working, they would just go through it. So then we thought, we'll switch to like the single wire that's up a little bit higher. And because like the piglets could get out, but they would always go back to their moms. So it was no big deal when they were like itty bitty and could get out. And but we had them in the pond, and we would think we had the wire placed right, and then it would rain, and they had sealed it better than we thought, and the water would rise higher than where we thought, and then the water would short it out. And so it was just pigs. If I did pigs again, I would do a series of like 9 or 12 actual metal pens that I would rotate them through in a circle. Because then the parasite cycle could be broken and all of that, but they would be fully contained.
Awesome. I didn't know that about the pigs and the ponds. I will definitely, my wife and have our own plans to do something similar in the future. So I will definitely keep that in mind.
Oh, for sure.
But speaking of which, so say someone's watching this and they are interested, or maybe they're on their journey, they're starting. What are like 3 tips that you would have for someone who's just getting started on their permaculture journey?
I would say you have to deprogram your brain a lot of us are programmed, depending especially on what education system we went through, to just not question and regurgitate. And a lot of the way, even if we were brought up in a different education system, still the way that our media and everything works, we're kind of just fed this one stream and you don't question. And so you have to deprogram your brain and reprogram it to be willing to question everything and sound like the crazy person. If you don't get to a point where you're okay with questioning even positions of authority, like with the doctor telling me, your son just has colic, this is normal. And my mom gut went, I don't think that it is. And I could have said, but you're a doctor, and so I'm going to trust you. And at some point you have to, and I'm not against doctors. Like when we break bones, we go to the doctor. When my son stopped breathing, we went to the doctor. Like, I'm not against doctors, but they're not God. They're also humans, and so they don't know everything either, and it's okay to question them, especially if your gut says, like, at least explore that little, I don't know. Because if you're not okay with questioning it, you're not going to be able to do permaculture, because everyone will tell you you're crazy. And you have to be okay with being a little bit crazy, swimming upstream, and saying, you know what? No, it's not normal to faint every month. It's not that. I don't care if you say it's normal. That's insane. And you think that this medicine is going to fix it. I'm going to try food. I'm going to let food be my medicine for a little while and see if that works. Just be willing to try stuff. Otherwise, you won't get here. And it is a rabbit hole. And you might be a little bit scared that you're going to slide down this really slippery slope of a rabbit hole and be the weird person. But if the weird person is your baby doesn't scream every night anymore, and you don't faint, and you finally got to have natural birth, and you were able to successfully nurse the next 2 children, and there's no gut issues with the next 2 children, and all of those things, then it's worth being the weird person. It's worth being the weird person. So deprogram your brain, be willing to question everything, and let people think you're weird. That's fine. And I would definitely find other people, even if it's just online. If you don't have people around, like close to you, find other people who are committed to the same things, because it is hard. And especially if you're a first generation doing this and you don't have people to lean on. And really, if you're coming from an agricultural background and you're changing, it's going to be even harder, because it feels like you're disrespecting those people. And you need to have community around you to help you stick with it. Otherwise, it's going to be really, really even harder. And I would just say, if you're starting down the path for permaculture, you know that something's broken, and just remember the reason that you realized it was broken. And then There are so many resources. Literally, we learned how to farm on YouTube. So just get on YouTube, look up all the things, go down the rabbit hole, spend 6 hours when you were like, how do you milk a cow? And now you're figuring out that if you put ducks in your pond, it'll keep them from leaking. And because you went way over here, and just you have so many, the internet can be scary and bad, but it also, there's so much information available, so much information available. And dive in, don't be scared to try. You are going to fail. It is going to suck. And that's fine. You cannot learn something new without failing a couple times. It's worth it. It's worth the failing. It's worth the hard. So I don't know.
That's awesome. Thank you for all of that. And I wanted to, you ended on the go YouTube, and I absolutely love YouTube. What are, including YouTube, or if there's anything outside of YouTube, what are some of the resources that you might recommend for someone on that journey?
Any book by Joel Salatin. He has one, if you're starting out, I would read the book You Can Farm. Because he breaks it down great into little steps. Like, it doesn't have to be, don't start with, I want cows and chickens and pigs and sheep and this permaculture garden that has fruit trees under pecan trees, and underneath of that there's bushes, and like, don't start there. You don't have to start there. Figure out how to have backyard chickens. And then once you're like, oh, I can do backyard chickens and egg chickens, then you can be like, oh, well, now we can add meat chickens. That's basically the same thing. And then, well, sheep are only a little bit bigger than chickens. And then you just like keep building up to it. So that's a really good one. You Can Farm. And then Salad Bar Beef is one that's really good for the like the nutritional differences in the way that beef is raised, as opposed to feedlot beef, and then grain finished beef in grass, or just open grazing beef, and then rotationally, intentionally mob grazed beef. Those all have different nutritional values, and that book is really good at explaining those things. Then anything by Steve Campbell. He's Texas specific. If you're someone in Texas, it was hard for us to find somebody Texas specific because it's such a different climate than a lot of places where people are thriving with homesteads and permaculture. And then Ranching Reboot is a good podcast to listen to. He has a lot of guests on there from all over the place, but they're all just really committed to regenerative agriculture, and I think helpful to people starting out from nothing, and then also people who like have a dying family farm, and how do we save it? How do we switch it over to regenerative agriculture? And so that's a good resource for both of those.
And what about your own company? Where do people go to find about what you do, and what products might they purchase from you?
So we have a website, permaculturepastures.com. And soon we'll be shipping, so everybody everywhere could order beef from us. Right now we're just doing beef. I hope soon we'll have lamb again when we start rotating sheep with our cows again. We're also on Facebook and Instagram with lots of videos and stuff of just daily farm life.
And is that also under Permaculture Pastures?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Addison. Thank you this has been a really personally enjoyable for me, because I actually intend to do something like this in the near future. So I'm just gleaning everything that I can from you, but just about the health benefits, but also about the lessons learned with the, like, bringing pigs and ducks to regenerate ponds. I never knew that. That's amazing. and using pigs to dip into the seed bank that's already there, and just some of the resources that you mentioned. I'm definitely going to be looking into some of those. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being here with us in order to bring your insight and wisdom into this area. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was really enjoyable.